This crowd rises to its feet. Carl slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
The Chase Down podcast is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost. There's no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Gang, the streak is over. The Boston Celtics have defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers after a spirited comeback. Boston pulled out a 120-117 NBA Cup victory. On one hand, I won't lie, this stinks. I hate Boston just as much as the rest of you. I hate to see the Boston Celtics win. But as the Chase Down Discord correctly noted, every team in NBA history that has started better than 15-0 failed to win an NBA championship. So with that said, let me welcome in my dear friend Mack Perry from the It's Cavalier pod. Mac, how you doing? How you feeling? Are we in mourning right now?
I'm in mourning, but there's slight optimism in that. I think that taking an L like this after seeing such a valiant effort in the second half, Cavaliers actually outscored Boston in that second half. I thought they did some good things. I thought Mobley with his touches, especially down low, that was something to point away as a positive. But overall, I just think taking that first loss of the season could take some pressure off of this team. I mean, there's an innate amount of pressure that is added to the success that you're having once you get off to a streak like this. So as pissed off as I am about taking this loss and some of the things that occurred throughout, I remain optimistic about this team's chances to contend for a title, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I saw S from the Athletic NBA show kind of tweet that, like, hey, Boston's just impossible on nights like this. That was kind of, and tip your hat to the Cavs. Boston's impossible when they shoot this well. And I kind of disagreed with him. And I was like, here's the good thing. It was possible. The Cavs down their first four choices at small forward for the evening against the team with the best wing complement in the league. Just barely lost, despite the fact that their second, maybe their best player of the season so far in Darius Garland has probably the worst shooting night of his career. Some of that you have to tip your cap to Boston. Some of it is just Darius had a nightmare game. And, the fact that you have all these negative things, they shoot the absolute cover on the ball, off the ball, and you lose by 3 on the road when they have a rest advantage. They've played one game in 5 days heading into this. Like, I don't know, man. I leave it actually feeling encouraged. And then, as I'm kind of getting ready to do the podcast, I kind of go back to, like, it's actually kind of nice to get to break down a loss in a weird way, because it's the first time.
What that feels like, right?
Yeah, well, first off, forgot what it feels like. And also, it's the first time we really have we have a body to dissect. The first time where the team was under duress and things didn't work out. And now we can kind of pick, we can probe, and we can kind of decipher the decisions that were made by Kenny in the staff, the decisions that were made by the players, the way they handled the adversity, and now we can really actually analyze. And that's kind of where I want to start. The Darius stuff we'll certainly get to, but something that I found interesting, Mac, that I kind of want to start with was the Cavs did close this game with Jared Allen on the bench. Mm-hmm. They played the 3 guards, Darius, Donovan, Ty, and then George Niang alongside Evan Mobley. What did you think about that decision? Did you think that was the right call? Obviously, they made big parts of their run playing one big. How did you net out on that decision?
Honestly, I liked it. We've all seen the season that Ty Jerome has had, and Kenny having the audacity and the confidence to continue to roll with some of these 3-guard looks. I like it.
In fairness, he only had guards today to play with.
That's true. That's fair. That's a fair sentiment. I'll give you that. But I think that had he still had some of these guys available, I don't think it's crazy to assume that maybe he still even goes with this look. Now, given the way that the bigs played collectively, because Evan Mobley I thought was phenomenal, especially in that third quarter, taking advantage of some
I thought
of
he
the
was
mismatches.
phenomenal defensively in the first half as well, even though Boston was going ballistic.
Yeah, I mean, he made some critical plays. The one that comes to mind for me is the rejection and then getting out in transition and finishing it on the offensive end. So I just think that there were certain possessions for Mobley in that first half that really, really showed just how much he's improved from just last season. And then on the offensive end, you really saw him get to work in the second half, namely in that third quarter. Jared Allen, on the other hand, I thought that there were specific points throughout where I felt that the Cavaliers were better suited leaving Mobley as the lone big out there in a sense. I understand that George Niang is going to have his nights where he can be picked apart from a defensive standpoint, but honestly, I've come away from these first 16 games feeling like this is the most impactful basketball of George Niang's Cleveland Cavaliers tenure. I've legitimately felt like the inside game and the 3-point percentage, if you're just looking at that alone for George, it's not going to make you feel too good. But when you take into account how well he has actually been when driving inside and attempting layups and whatnot, he's got this nice little floater that works for some reason. But I honestly feel like he's given some quality minutes. So I understood the closing lineup. How did you feel about it?
I got to say, it's actually one of my first nits that I've got to pick with Mr. Kenny Atkinson. And, you know, it's funny because I think really the lineup data tells me that I'm probably just wrong. You know, George was plus 15 on the night, Jarrett minus 16. And, you know, and it's hard to blame Kenny for rolling with what's working. But with that said, let me make the case, because the Cavs I thought in the second half did an unbelievable job of baiting Boston into their worst habits. I saw a few people online complaining about the switching, complaining that they kept putting Darius in isolation against Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I would suggest those folks rewatch those possessions. Because one, I think it's just an important thing to decide to say, hey, we're not going to freak out and scramble. You know, as I said in our preview, is if you watch any Celtics game all season, what you see, if you watch the opposing broadcast, you just have anguished opposing commentators talking about how you can't overhelp. And what did the Cavs do in the first half? They overhelped. They got into scramble situations. They put sometimes 3 on the ball. And when you put 3 on the ball against Boston, you get cooked. It's just what happens. And ultimately what they did in the second half was they said, hey, we're actually fine. We're going to maintain our defensive integrity, especially when they have someone like Keita on the floor who isn't a shooting threat. We trust that we can recover to him. And we're going to say, hey, if you want to put Darius in a switch, we'll give it to you. And if you drive on Darius, he's going to do his best to get into your chest, see if he can draw a few offensive fouls on the way. Probably should have drawn a couple more with those Tatum stiff arms, one could argue. But you know, putting that aside, you kind of gamble that Darius is going to be able to funnel, you know, whether it was Tatum or Brown, into the lane for Mobley or Jarrett to clean up. And I thought that's a big reason why Boston only scored 28 points in the third quarter. And I know only 28 sounds ridiculous, but this is a prolific team, and the Cavs were without their top 3 options defensively on the perimeter. So you do that, and it works really, really well. And I thought that they still did an okay job. Boston only scored 27 in the fourth. But with Horford out there, it was just one step further that Mobley had to step out, and Niang was not going to provide similar tag out ability, you know? So that's my only thing that I would have said is, like, I didn't think they were running the craziest, spaciest offense anyway. It was a lot of Donovan going nuts in the fourth. I just would have said, I want to go down knowing that I'm going to funnel the ball into either Jarrett or Evan, whoever is closer to the rim, and the other one is going to be able to scram out and mess with their 3-point shooters. And so that was my only thing, because I thought the defensive strategy of switching Darius was great. I thought it was exactly what they should have done. I think it baits Tatum and Brown into their worst impulses. And by the way, those guys are so good and so accomplished as isolation scorers that a lot of the time they're going to score.
Frankly, it doesn't matter sometimes who you have out there on them. They're gonna get their points.
Yeah. So like those guys are great. Even the best defensive strategy against a historically good offense, you're going to give up something. But I think that giving up those, contested isolation drives off of switches into help defenders is the way I'd rather die to Boston 100 times out of 100.
I think that's fair. I think you can certainly make that argument, considering that the Cavaliers just did not shoot the ball. They didn't provide a ton of spacing, and
not a lot of spice either.
They did not provide a ton of spacing for the ball handlers in the game, honestly. But the one thing that I have to ask you about is, one of the sour points for this Cavaliers team, even though we've been on this massive win streak up until tonight, has been the perimeter defense. Cavaliers allow their opponents to knock down a high percentage of their perimeter shots. Did that worry you a lot coming into this game, knowing that Boston takes 50-plus triples a game?
Well, I mean, you held Boston to 41 3-point attempts, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's 10 less than their average. And they were on pace to do that. So I think the Cavs just got away from I think their lack of point of attack options in this game made it so they overhelped in the first half. I was worried about it, of course. But, ultimately, like, I do think that they found the right answers on the defensive end of the ball. If you hold Boston to 110 points a game, like, they gave up 55 points in the second half. If you hold Boston to 110, you can beat them in a series.
Yeah.
If Boston is around the 118, 120, 124 range, it just gets too hard because they have such great defenders. They have the ability to switch at a really, really high level and dissuade you from doing the thing that they want to do, which is shoot threes. And that's something that I continue to hammer when people, demand that the Cavs get a more traditional roster so they can be more quote unquote modern. It's like, well, Boston won't let you shoot threes. Go watch that Knicks opener where, they switch so much. Their bigs are mobile. Even Keita, who is like the plotting big of the group, hangs pretty well. Donovan had to hit a couple really tough mid-rangers over him. They don't give up a lot at the three. You have to kind of feast at the rim against them. So, I don't know. I'm worried. I'm going to be worried about it until the 3-point percentages normalize. Boston starts 14 of 24 from three. Justin's favorite stat is Steph Curry is a career 38% shooter on wide open threes or whatever it is. Maybe it's a little higher now. I don't remember. But I do think there is a bit of luck at play here. I don't think the Cavs are a bad defensive team. I do think there's been slippage on that end over the last week or two. But I think that generally reflects in the attempts more than the percentages. I don't see a barrage of wide open threes, unlike other teams. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that if you were to assign, if you're doing a pie chart, how much of it is just, hey, their other teams are hitting shot. Jose Alvarado went 7 for 7. I don't know what you want me to do, versus they've got a problem that they need to address.
Honestly, I feel like it's a little bit of each, Carter. We saw.
What's your percentage split? I'm holding you to it.
Okay, I'm going to go 65-35 on that, and the 65 being that there's been some excellent shot making. We saw Dame Lillard hit about 15 triples against this Cavaliers team in 2 games collectively, and many of those were heavily contested. Sometimes it is just great shot making, and you saw that from Tatum at points tonight in this game and various other Celtics. But
I cannot believe the NBA Twitter community clowned this man into this kind of season. I'm furious.
It's
live and let die, guys. Come on.
blame the Olympics. Blame Steve Kerr.
I blame the community. Steve Kerr was right. We didn't need to clown the guy.
Oh man, it's he can be even better, in my opinion. I think this man can get even better, but we're not here to gas him up. I'll just say this. I think that there has been some excellent shot making on the perimeter against this Cavaliers team, but I do also feel like there are points where they're a bit lackadaisical in terms of their rotations or closing out. Obviously, when you don't have some of your best point of attack and perimeter defenders out there, it's going to make it that much tougher. But we have legitimately watched this team give up wide open looks to the Charlottes, to the Chicagos of the world, for those teams to scratch and call their way back into games against Cleveland. But I don't think it's a big enough problem to freak out in a major sense. I just think it's something to keep an eye on, similar to the rebounding.
That's fair. That's fair. And by the way, they started 14 of 22, not 14 of 24. An
Wow,
even more.
We can't always be right.
Yeah, an even more outrageous start than I thought. So, yeah, I don't know, man. The three-point shooting stuff, like, I do think the Cavs offense is able to keep pace. I also feel like because they've been up, teams really need to attack them in that way, you know?
Got to chuck them up. Yep.
So, I don't know, man. I just, it hasn't been a problem in years past. And at the end of the day, I don't think they're doing anything different enough schematically. Like, I think they're pretty much playing the same defense they've played in years past. Maybe a bit more zone, so I guess you could point to that. But, like, when they're in their base, I don't feel like they're playing a different style of defense. So maybe there's been some slippage in that style. Maybe it's just a bit more Sam Merrill, a bit more 2-3 guard lineups than we had in years past, where you're playing a lot more, Isaac and Max at the 2 and the 3, I guess. But again, I just don't, until someone demonstratively proves to me that this team's defense is what's holding it back at the highest level of the game, I'm not going to buy it, because it hasn't been the case yet. The 2 guard lineups, the Darius Donovan lineups, have unbelievably stellar defensive ratings, even in the postseason, even in the the parts of the season where everyone says the Cavs get quote unquote exposed, like that defense has held up. That pairing has held up. So I will continue to be much more fixated on the offensive end of the ball. And to that end, how do you think they played on the offensive end of the ball in this game?
I think that obviously the big thing that's going to stick out is that ugly 3 of 21 from Darius Garland, if you're simply looking at the stat sheet. But I do feel like they did a couple of things really well. I think we know that Boston will concede the inside game to you at points. And I thought that they decided to attack that, especially in that third quarter, as I keep pointing to for Mobley. But it's, to me, the lack of shot making at times.
Yeah,
it really puts a damper at it.
That's what Boston almost can always count on, is 1 or 2 of their guys is shot making their ass off.
Yeah, and you expected that at least you would get a big time performance out of your backcourt tonight, where you really needed to lean on them. I felt like we got that from Donovan when you consider the full extent of the game. Maybe not so much in the first half, but I feel like Donovan really turned things on in the second, especially in the fourth quarter, to get this team really back into it. But I really expected more from Darius in this one. The one thing that I will say is that I refuse to use one bad game as an excuse to undo everything he did well in the first 15 games to open this season. And I know that we're going to hear it about Darius not performing in big-time performances after this game, but it was tough to see him go through some of these shooting slumps tonight. There was back-to-back triples that he had the opportunity to make in the fourth to really pull this game to within reach, to really tie the game. But he couldn't drop him. He was just off. And I know you said that, Justin really, really likes his wide open triple percentages. Darius entered tonight shooting 52.8% from on his wide open triples. I mean, that's 28 of 53 entering tonight. He has been highly efficient when taking that shot, especially the catch and shoot stuff. This man has been absolutely phenomenal. 49% entering tonight on catch and shoot attempts for Darius Garland on pretty good volume. So to see him not hit some of these that he has started the season off hitting, it was brutal.
And frankly, like, you do get nervous. I mean, he had the heat pack, left for a healthy part of the game against Hornets, came back and closed the game out. But, the second you hear Darius Garland back kicking up again, you get worried, because this is a guy who, we saw last year, just doesn't have a tremendous amount of physical margin for error when his body's not right. He's not a big guy. He's not a strong guy. He's not an explosive guy. He is a guy who gets by on his craft. And, when Al Horford's pinning your layups against the backboard,
Carter, that stung so much. It was at least two or three.
It felt like last year. It felt like last year. And, I think I felt, if I feel anguished about anything, it's that Darius, on his, get his flowers type of week, going into this showdown where he's, again, arguably been the best player on the team, or darn near close to it, to have, again, probably the worst shooting percentage of his life, or shooting performance of his life, not be able to consistently beat the Celtics guards off the dribble, not being able to beat their bigs off the dribble, getting stoned in transition a couple times, missing the open threes. And, I think Darius would tell you, if he even had a normal bad game, if he went 6 for 21, the Cavs win this game.
Is that what constitutes as a normal bad game?
I'm just saying, like a normal human bad game that a good player has. Where Donovan went 13 for 29 tonight. That's not an efficient night. From the field. If he had a normal bad game, then I think the Cavs absolutely win. I think he would probably tell you that. I'm sure he's going to have a hard time sleeping tonight. I do want to take a little. Issue with someone in the comments who said that he killed them on the defensive end as well. Again, I don't think he did. I think he actually did his job on that end of the floor as Boston attacked him over and over and over again in the second half on those switches. How many fouls did Darius Garland have tonight, Mac?
0 personal fouls.
0,
for this man.
And that's like the one spot where you really do, when you're switching a really small guard onto these physical wings like Tatum and Brown, who hit you hard on every drive and are pushing off and are waiting for you to try to close back into their space and jumping into. They do all sorts of stuff with their, because they're so physically gifted. And he didn't foul. He funneled them to where they needed to go. Every now and again they got theirs, because that's what great offensive players do. But I thought Darius did a great job on the defensive end of the floor. But yeah, I mean, on offense, it was a nightmare game. And it's. I like that he didn't stop shooting. I like that he kept going for it. I saw some folks suggesting that he just stop, and it's like, well, you just can't be out there if you're not gonna.
Well, I mean,
if you're not gonna
have
go,
your cake and eat it too, folks. Last season, one of the biggest complaints about Darius was him being, the lack of confidence and just kind of giving up after he saw the shot not falling. So it is a good thing. It is a good thing to see him continue to do so.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's just, to your point, I'm not ready to write it off. I do worry that we have last year, I think, planted some seeds of doubt of like, hey, how can he play through these injuries, and are these injuries going to linger? Is the back going to be a problem? Because at a certain point, like, if you're going to be out there, you got to be helpful. You got to be able to play at the highest level. You got to be a great scorer. I thought his playmaking was very solid in this game, despite the nightmare scoring. They multiple Darius Garland, Craig Porter Jr. pick and roll actions when they were stowing Kata on him, but yeah, no way around it. It was just not Darius's best night at the office. But you know what, Mac? I want you to always have your best night at the office, and only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworkers. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. Mac, I did want to talk about the fact that we give Darius credit for continuing to shoot, and he gets up 21 shot attempts. Obviously, only makes 3. Donovan takes 29 shot attempts, and it's hard to quibble with the outcome, especially in the second half. They put up a 140.8 offensive rating in the second half. That's a blistering 79 points. Are you at all concerned that the guards took up such a high percentage of the field goal attempt share? They took 50 of the Cavaliers' 93 shots tonight.
A little. I think that there are going to be certain performances where you want to lean on them. I think it might be heavily matchup dependent, but I think that I would have liked to see Evan Mobley be fed a little more in that fourth quarter. The talk all off season long was about featuring him more, getting him more touches. And to Kenny Atkinson and his staff's credit, they have managed to do that. Mobley is averaging a career high in field goal attempts and points, and he's averaging a career low in minutes. And the touches are up at least 2 compared to last season, 2 per game. I would have liked to see them spread the ball around a little bit more. You don't like a game where Donnie has to take 25 plus shots. You don't like to see a game, obviously, where Darius goes 3 of 21. But
yeah, my question is, are we worried about this if Darius goes 10 of 21?
No, I think ultimately you're satisfied with a W. If it ends in a W, what is there to complain about? I think we can nitpick these things, but again, I think it'll be heavily one matchup dependent, and 2, you have to go with the flow of the game. Donnie, obviously, Spida, he had it going on down the stretch, and honestly, it felt like that was the only thing that was working at certain points. So you're going to give him the ball and ask him to carry you home. You would have liked to see Darius hit some more of these shots tonight, but these guys have been phenomenal to start this season. And Darius, as we kept, harping on the interior defense of Al Horford at the rim, Darius has been phenomenal when driving the basketball. He's completing 64.5% of his field goal attempts when driving the basketball. He's like 3rd or 4th in the league in drives this year, and it's something that has worked very well. So I wanted to see him continue to attack, but to answer your question without the long-winded response, no. Ultimately, I'm not concerned about the way that the touches are being spread.
I'm just right on the periphery of concern. The tracking data is not available yet tonight. But the first thing I'm going to check tomorrow morning is how many what was the touch distribution. Something that we found I've talked about all season is that Darius has been leading the team in touches per game, and Evan's been second. Yep. Donovan's been third. Now, I don't expect Donovan not to be the guy who leads the team in touches on a night like tonight where he gets up 29 shots. But what I want to see is how democratized was it? Are we going to pull it up and see Donovan with 75, Darius with 71, and Evan with like 53? So I'll be interested to see if there's any reversion to the mean, because ultimately, for all the talk about the Cavs offense being revolutionized and better than it's ever been, we really actually only care about it in terms of how it does against the best competition. So if they did indeed kind of just have a regression to the mean game offensively, where they kind of go back to just the guards initiate everything, then, that's at least worth considering. Now, for the most part, I thought the team ran pretty good offense, especially in that third quarter. And speaking of kind of the emphasis from Kenny, Joe Mazzulla was asked about hey, how did the Cavs come back? And he mentioned that the Cavs were pushing in transition a lot and getting cross matches. A lot of Evans' buckets in that 14-point third quarter were just deep seals on Peyton Pritchard, Drew Holiday, Derek White, right?
Yeah, I mean, you saw what they've been able to do this all season long in transition. Mobley, and you're talking about the touches, 57.9 on the season. And I am very curious to see what it looks like after tonight. But I guess the question that I would pose to you, Carter, is Did you take umbrage with the way that the touches were spread? Did you take more umbrage with the way that they were spread, or did you feel like they were reverted back to playing heavily like they did last season, where there was no ball movement at all?
I mean, there were a lot of no pass possessions or small pass possessions, but like it's hard to know because Boston's just so good at forcing that out of you. They're so good at switching everything and keeping your offense from flowing. I thought the Cavs did a nice job, especially in that third quarter, of slipping screens, catching the ball down with a little motion downhill, and forcing Boston to put two on the ball with those slips, and getting them into rotation. I thought in the fourth quarter that definitely stopped a little bit. But again, it's hard to quibble with 29 points, but a lot of that was like, some miracle plays from Donovan. So, like, I do think the process got a little worse. I guess if I'm being really honest with myself, Mac, I think the process got a little worse in the fourth. Now, part of that is that their point guard wasn't someone you really wanted to have the ball on a game like tonight. You wanted Donovan to have the ball, and I wanted Donovan to have the ball. Did I want more Evan touches? Yes, I did, but also I felt like they were getting decent looks, and I didn't really see like a lot of possessions where Boston put three on Donovan and Evan was open in the short roll and he absolutely should have gotten into him. Like, I just didn't see a lot of that. So I don't know, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B on that front.
I think that's fair. The one thing that I wanted to ask you about is, obviously the decision about who would start at the three was weighing heavily on people's minds, considering who was not available tonight. How did you feel about the Sam Merrill minutes?
I think they looked outmatched in them. And I just don't think that's the lineup that really works. But Kenny played 8 guys tonight. It's not like
that's
he played
smallest rotation we've seen this season.
Yeah, he didn't play any of the kids, and he didn't play Tristan. I think that was the right decision. So I guess ultimately, I thought Ty would get the start, and he certainly closed with Ty Jerome, who had yet another really strong game, I thought. But like, you were gonna have to find 20 minutes of Sam Merrill or at the 3 in this game. You just were. And maybe you could argue, and maybe you should argue, I don't know, maybe you should argue that would be best served in Sam Hauser minutes. Like Sam Hauser plays 21 minutes, like maybe just match Merrill with him because it's a tough matchup. But like, how could Kenny have known that Craig Porter Jr. was going to play like a man on fire tonight? Craig I don't think has had a very, particularly strong start to the year on the offensive end of the ball. So if he was like, well, I don't have Karras to go to, I need someone to run my offense off the bench, and like, if Craig has something, that's a bonus, but I'm not going to count on that. So I think it's a bit of a hindsight 2020 thing, even though I wouldn't have started Sam. I just think you were going to have to find those 20 minutes somewhere, and it's just a tough matchup for Sam. I don't like this matchup, and I think that if the team's fully healthy, he might be the first, and you go to play them in the playoffs, he might be the first guy I say, it's not going to be your series, buddy.
I think that's fair. I mean, clearly you could see it. What can you expect when you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum?
That's the best wing duo in the league. They're amazing.
Yeah. What can you expect Sam to do in that scenario? I do feel like the field goal attempts for him, just 3, especially.
They don't let you. That's the thing, man. They just switch. They just switch. They are so freaking brutally physical at the point of attack, which is part of why I was so annoyed with Celtics Twitter complaining about the whistle, because I'm like, and the Celtics not getting calls, because I'm like, man, they beat the hell out of you on every pin down. I don't think they do great with the explosive, quick burst guards. But if you are a guy who makes his hay coming off pin downs, good luck, buddy. Because Drew Holiday is gonna hip check you on every single curl. You're never gonna catch the ball on balance. Like, I just don't think it's his matchup. Like, 3 attempts, I didn't see any. He took one every time he got one. He just only got 3 in his 20 minutes.
I guess you could say they were kind of plastered to him
Yeah.
based upon the switches and whatnot. So that's fair. It was nice to see Craig kind of step in and hit some step backs
Oh,
tonight.
how about Craig Porter Jr., man? Best game of the... I felt, bro, let me say this. I think this was an important game for Craig's, like, midterm future with the team. Because this is a guy who was a hero for them last year when they didn't have a single point guard. They didn't have a penny to, rub between their two fingers, like they had nothing. And they needed guard play, and he provided it in a pinch. And as the guards got healthy, it became, in my opinion, awkward because he's a lead guard. That's his thing. And he doesn't have a super reliable jumper. And I haven't seen him play a ton of great minutes where he doesn't get to have the ball in his hands a lot. And starting the year, I've always felt like of the rotation players, he's felt like the most odd man out to me. Where his fit is just on a lot, I think on like 25 rosters, the fit is easy for him. He's spark plug, backup point guard. But this team has so many freaking ball handlers and guys who they want to start plays. It's hard, I think, for him on this roster. So the fact that he comes into this game, hits the open threes that are given to him, both off the bounce and catch and shoot. The fact that he just figures out what the team needs and does it. They were guarding him with, Boston was guarding him with their center. And
That's
he
disrespectful.
was playing as the screener. He was making plays out of the short roll, both as a finisher and a passer. And like, I just thought it was his best fit into what the team's doing without having to be the featured player game of his Cavs career. What do you think about that take?
Honestly, I think that's an eloquent way to sum up his performance tonight because, I mean, you just look at what he was able to do last season, and we know that the biggest gripe with Craig was the triple, right? There were often times in which he did not appear confident in taking that, had the opposition given him the space. And I think that against this type of opponent, knowing the context of this matchup, Craig being able to pull up and hit some of the catch and shoot attempts that he got tonight, it's awesome. We know what he can do as a rebounder, getting in there and contesting and trying sky for some of those boards. We know that even though he is undersized, he can still hold his own defensively. When you're talking about him being the odd man out, it's spot on because Ty Jerome, after suffering the ankle injury last season and only being, available for 2 games, Craig kind of lucked into the opportunity and he rendered Ty Jerome an afterthought. And it's been kind of the complete opposite of that this season. And people just flat out forgot about how good Ty Jerome could be. I don't think anybody, make no mistake, I don't think anybody expected
He's never
Ty.
been this good.
Yeah,
and this is as
that.
a captain of the Ty Jerome fan club prior to the signing, and he was someone I really was into. I did not see this coming.
Nobody did. I think they mentioned during the broadcast tonight, and Kenny Atkins's time there, not even Kenny felt that he could be that good with Golden State. But yeah, he has essentially rendered Craig Porter Jr. an afterthought. And to know that you have that type of depth at the guard spot, it is pretty assuring. I'll say that much. It sucks that he doesn't have the size that a Ty Jerome has out there to put him in specific lineups. And that's the one benefit above all else to me that Ty Jerome brings is the positional versatility. You can put him anywhere 1 through 3 and find him Mitch. You can't do that with Craig. So
yeah, I thought he was really nasty at the point of attack guarding Brown and Tatum tonight. I thought he played really gritty physical basketball despite being at a size disadvantage. I just think with Ty, it's the size and it's the shooting and it's the when you have those two things, you can blend in on a night where someone else is really controlling the game. He doesn't have to. Craig is most helpful when he is loud and noticeable. Like on games where you don't really feel Craig's presence, that's typically a game where he's like not his most helpful. Whereas Ty can have super helpful 5-6 minute shifts just by being tall, spacing in the right spot, and guarding up. So I just think his margin for error within the context of this roster is easier. But so to that end, like Craig getting an opportunity like this, having to play with other guards who are, he played in exclusively 3-guard lineups tonight because, again, that was all the Cavs had. And he didn't need to spam pick and roll to be helpful. He didn't need to, hit 4 or 5 pull-up mid-rangers to be helpful. He was just helpful by being a smart, athletic player who did hit timely shots. There's no way around it, but I thought this was his most complimentary game as a Cavalier. And like, I think if for him to stick on this roster long term and like be what the Cavs kind of need that spot to be, being that kind of complimentary player is exactly what Craig needs to be. So big shouts to him. He obviously gets a lot of love. Anything else you want to hit on before we go? Anything else that jumps out at you about this game?
Honestly, no. I'll just say this again. I did not walk away from this loss feeling bad about the Cavaliers' chances at all moving forward, especially looking forward to the December 3rd, I believe, rematch versus this Boston team. I felt like they gave it their all despite this situation, despite not having specific rotational players available. So, no, I actually feel pretty good.
Yeah, I feel good too. I liked that Evan had his day in the sun again. I liked that he consistently finished when he got switches and got the ball with advantage. He was not hesitant. I thought he played a great defensive game. I thought the Cavs just in general like showed a lot. I think we're just having a different conversation if they lose by 15 or 13 or something like that and they can't mount a comeback. But that was there are a lot of fake comebacks in the NBA. We know this to be true.
Yeah.
It's just part of the game, and that's what it is. It just happens. But like, I don't think this was a fake comeback. Boston had to work for this one. They were sweating it out as soon as 5 minutes left in the third. Boston had to go win, and like the reality is, by the way, it must be noted, Mac. Good teams win, great teams cover. And our boys did indeed cover the spread. I think it landed like 5.5 going into this. And like, I don't know, man. If you had told me the Cavs were going to start 15-0 and then barely lose a gutty game against Boston in Boston when Boston was super well rested and the Cavs had just run one of the busiest gauntlets I've seen.
No rest.
Man, I don't know. Final question before we go. Do you think they're going to play everyone tomorrow night against the Pelicans? Or do you think it's going to be a bench mob game?
They should. They should play everybody. I think that you have a performance like tonight where you go with the 8-man rotation. Donovan played 40 tonight. I think you should play everybody.
Yeah, well, I'll be interested to see if Darius plays. I do think maybe that back could use a day off. The Cavs are looking at their first real aggressively heavy rest stretch of the year. They play tomorrow at home in New Orleans. Then they have 3 days off. They don't play till Sunday, hosting the Raptors. Then they get another 2 days off before they go play versus Atlanta. So 3 home games in a row, only 3 games in 8 days, 9 days. Like, you're not getting better than that in an NBA season. So whatever those heavy legs are, this is the time to rest them. This is the time to, everyone's going to get to hang out at home. They're not going to be flying back and forth. They're going to get to, sleep in their own beds, get their legs under them. And for the rest of the way, it'll be more like a normal schedule where you just play regular amounts of basketball. And I'm really excited to see kind of how the Cavs respond.
Same, man. And I think I misunderstood your question. Yeah. No, I think that Kenny should try and emphasize maybe a baked in rest game.
A deeper rotation is what you're saying.
Yes.
Play 14, 15, 16 on the roster.
Yes, that's what I was saying. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of picked up what you were putting down midway through. But it's not proper for a host to correct his guest. So anyway, man, thank you so much for coming on. It was a disappointing evening, no doubt, but still, I would say an encouraging one. And the Cavs have plenty to take away. And finally, they get some tape to learn from. They actually lost, so they can figure out what went wrong. And God knows our head coach is the kind of maniac that will be grinding that tape probably all the way home tonight. So, Mac, before I let you go ahead and plug your stuff because you are doing unbelievable work covering the team.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. You guys can catch me at It's Cavalier_pod over on YouTube after every game. I've been lucky enough prior to tonight to podcast with a W, but as Carter said, the first L, there's some things to break down. So look forward to some of that as well.
Well, again, I have to give you so much credit. You solo pod, which is frankly psychopath behavior because I am fried after every time I ever do one. And unlike Justin and I's lazy asses, you do it almost every single game. So, obviously I'm partial to my own podcast here, and I'm so appreciative of our listeners. But if you're ever looking for post game coverage, you can literally guarantee you're going to get it from Mac almost every night. So be sure to follow It's Cavalier on YouTube, on all your podcast platforms. It's one of my favorite listens, and just a good vibe pod. So I really appreciate you coming on, Mac.
Thanks, man.
All righty. That's it, gang. It's, we are, the pod will be dark for about a week. We're getting our rest too. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for riding us with us through that win streak. It was a heck of a lot of fun. The Cavaliers are 15-1. But, the party doesn't stop here. If you want to support the pod, go ahead and like us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. If you're a fan of the audio, go ahead and subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, help us cook those books. Please, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting this team. And as always, go Cavs.